Hello there, good people. If you have watched one of our videos before, you may already know that I simply love gaming laptops. Mostly because of the flexibility you get, and I really want to share as much of my passion for our little mobile gaming companions as somehow possible. Today will be another one of those videos, and not only do I have some very interesting laptops for you today, and one of them is the all-new 2026 ROG Zephyrus G14, so I hope you are as excited about that one as I am. But we also have a new game release, which would be IO Interactive's 007 First Light. So I'd say everything comes together already quite nicely. We will also only have a look at thin and light systems today, and I know some of you may be skeptical, since thinner chassis usually mean a performance, noise or temperature compromise. And while that may be true, all of the four laptops right here in front of me are also quite subtle, which is often the case for this class of device. And since I would assume most of you aren't just gaming, especially on a laptop, you can easily take each and every one of our selection to class, to work, to the coffee shop around the corner, or wherever else you would need a notebook. And all of that without any drawbacks when it comes to things like battery life, overall weight, screen quality, ports, or all the other things that make a good laptop. Well, a good laptop aside from their gaming performance. And boy, can these puppies game. And yes, while something like the Alienware 18 Area 51, for example, with its full wattage RTX 5090 and high-end Intel CPU, will give you an overall better performance experience, you do not want to move this one around unless you absolutely have to. And I would argue, with modern upscaling technologies, you are far better off getting some additional performance via software solutions than trying to feed more power to these thin and light systems. And when we are talking about upscaling, nobody does it quite like nvidia does, so we partnered with Team Green for today's video, and I will give you an overview of what kind of performance you can get in 007's latest virtual adventure on a 5070 Ti, RTX 5090 and something a bit more modest in the form of a 5070 and RTX 5060. We will also check out Pragmata once again, since it's one of the most effectively optimized path tracing titles, and I really want to see if you can get it running properly on the more mid-range oriented cards. And last but not least, we will get some racing action going with Forza Horizon 6, putting the pedal to the metal with the help of nvidia's latest and greatest when it comes to GPUs, upscaling and frame generation. So sit back, relax and let's get into it. Our star of the show for today is of course the 2026 Asus ROG Zephyrus G14, and ever since the 2023 predecessor, the 14-inch mini LED equipped insanity that put a 4090 in a form factor you simply haven't seen before, this one is basically the pinnacle when it comes to combining a sleek, subtle, lightweight and premium chassis with a ton of performance. For this video, we got our hands on the RTX 5070 Ti config juiced up with around 120 watts. And new for this year is Intel's Panther Lake CPU running everything in addition to the GPU. And no worries folks, we are hard at work testing this one properly, so we will have our regular written review on the website ready for you soon. And the video will follow as fast as I can manage as well, so definitely make sure to leave your sub so you won't miss it. For the 5090 experience of simply maxing out everything without having to worry about settings, I got my hands on the Razer Blade 16. And again, we will have our review update for the 2026 version ready quite soon, but for today, this is still running with an AMD CPU. But since nvidia's mobile flagship still gets up to 160 watts, the Blade is a lot faster than you might expect given its incredibly sleek form factor. And since we know not everyone wants to or can shell out that much cash for their mobile gaming experience, I'm throwing the Gigabye Aero X16 in the mix. And the slim 16-incher also bets on an AMD and nvidia combo, this time with a Ryzen 9 and an RTX 5070. That one is running with only about 85 watts, so it will be incredibly interesting to see how it fares with our selection of AAA games for today. Last but not least, we have the Legion 7A we just recently reviewed, and I know it's not quite an affordable option, but it's powered by a 5060 and should therefore be a good representation of what most of you guys might have on their wishlist. Alrighty, with that out of the way, let's play some video games, and similar to the G14, we have another highlight for today, which is the new Bond game I just mentioned in the intro. And while most of my playthrough was primarily just testing these 4 laptops, I still got a pretty solid first impression of the third-person action game, and well, it looks incredible, with some detailed environments and very impressively animated characters. And the whole story and overall narrative fit our Majesty's favorites by quite well.
I would like you to join His Majesty's Secret Service. I want to make you a spy.
On the technical side, 007 First Light runs on the studio's very own Glacier engine, and later this year it will apparently also get a path tracing update. So for now I will just give you a bit of an overview of what you can get out of our 4 mobile GPUs here by utilizing nvidia's upscaling and frame gen tech to get the best mix of a smooth FPS experience, while at the same time enjoying the game with the best visuals like it was intended by the developers. So without any further ado, let's see what the new G14 can do here. Right off the bat, the 5070 Ti in the ROG's turbo mode, running at about 115 watts, gives us about 50 FPS give or take, with everything at max in 1600p using DLSS quality and in the more demanding areas of the game. 007 First Light is also one of the first native DLSS 4.5 titles, so naturally I tried the DLSS performance mode as well to see if we can benefit from a bit of an FPS boost before using frame generation. And well, we definitely can, and I cannot really make out a difference when it comes to the visual quality here. And since we're dealing with a 14-inch OLED, everything looks incredibly crisp, and sure, you could drop things to Full HD as well, but you really don't have to, unless you want to forego frame generation completely. If you do not mind the additionally generated frames, you can easily max out the 120Hz refresh rate of the G14's display with around 2 to 3x MFG. The new game runs incredibly well, and even with our review build I had absolutely no issues. And even though we are using a 14-inch laptop here, I had an amazing time. And the fact that you can easily have that very experience with you wherever you want to set up this beauty, well, I think this already makes the case for a thin and light gaming laptop on its own. And while we wait for 007 to get the upgrade, what about another path trace title to see what the small 14-incher with its 5070 Ti can do once it gets really demanding. In Pragmata, with everything maxed out, and as I just mentioned, that includes ray and path tracing, we have to drop things to Full HD, but the Zephyrus manages around 50 to 55ish FPS depending on the area. But this place in the game is as tough as it gets, so I like to use it for evaluation purposes, and usually your average FPS numbers are a bit higher. For me personally, I would just add 2 or 3x MFG again to get close or match the native refresh rate of the 120Hz OLED. But if you would rather add a few more initial FPS, you could opt for DLSS performance instead of quality, but since we are at Full HD already, well, the game might lack in sharpness for some of you. But I would not really compromise on path tracing for this title, since it's quite clear that Capcom put everything together with the high-end rendering technique in mind, and again, the fact that we can relatively easily enjoy a game that looks like this with path tracing on a 14-inch 1.6 kg laptop, well, the times we live in. If you rather want something a bit more casual, how about taking your favorite Porsche for a spin in Forza Horizon 6? And I got to be honest, I was expecting that I would have to drop things down to Full HD here once again, but even in the G14's balance mode, everything maxed out with ray tracing and all of that at 1600p, we already get around 55 to 60ish FPS with DLSS quality. And since Forza is a 4.5 title as well, I would simply drop things to DLSS performance to get above 60 FPS, no problem. For an added boost, you can put the 14-incher in its turbo mode, and with 2x FG, you can enjoy Japan in the OLED native refresh rate. Personally, I rather play in balanced and put FG into 3x to get the same FPS numbers, but enjoy a much quieter gaming experience, especially since the ROG boasts one of the best speaker systems in any laptop on the market right now, so no headphones required. Alright, that's the G14 for now, so what about the good old Blade 16? All maxed out in 007 First Light, and in the Razer's OLED native res we get around 70 to 80 FPS, with occasional dips into the mid-60s depending on the area. DLSS performance nets you about a 20 FPS increase, again without any noticeable visual compromises, at least none that I could see. Switching back to quality and enabling dynamic MFG, well, let's just say you might better want to get used to your frame counter getting bored around the 16 inches native 240Hz refresh rate. I have also not come across any visual artifacts that would break immersion, and render latency is also impeccable for those of you that tend to worry about that, a behavior I have also seen on the G14 already. So Team Green's reflex technology is definitely putting in the work here to ensure you get a responsive experience. In Forza, things easily hover above 60 FPS, constantly scratching on the 70 FPS mark in the game's highest possible settings, including ray tracing and DLSS quality, and an easy 200 FPS or more with frame generation. Pragmata is of course an entirely different beast altogether, especially with path tracing again, yet despite its slim form factor, the Blade with its 160 watts RTX 5090 is able to pull it off in QHD with DLSS set to balanced, which nets us a little over 50 FPS consistently in the game's most demanding scenarios, while passing the 60 FPS mark in most other areas. Adding 4x frame generation, well, for a story game you are playing with a controller, this is as smooth as it gets, and you can take in all the gorgeous, physically correct reflections and global illumination with FPS numbers way above 150, often getting somewhat close to 200 FPS. Not too shabby for a 16-inch laptop weighing just about 2 kg. For the Aero and its 5070, and circling back to First Light, I started out in Full HD and Ultra settings, and with DLSS in quality, I got FPS numbers just slightly below 60, while dropping things to performance gets us a very nice boost into the 70s, at least in this scene right here, while generally your average FPS numbers will be a bit higher, so as per usual, there will be a bit of variance depending on what is happening on screen. Alternatively, setting everything to high and DLSS quality didn't do that much for our FPS numbers, and visually, well, given the fact that DLSS performance once again does look very well, it might just be the easier thing to do than deal with the settings, even though the difference between high and ultra is also marginal. But again, you simply do not get the same overall FPS gains. And yes, I know we are at the edge or even above the 5070's 8 gigs of VRAM, so I was also skeptical what this would mean for our overall FPS experience, or if you would have to deal with occasional stutters. But as you can see from our screen grabs, this is really not the case, and again, First Light runs incredibly well and stable. Adding 4x FG into the mix also got us right up there to the Aero's 165Hz native refresh rate, so if you prefer an even smoother experience, well, you've got options. For Forza, I used the same ray tracing setting I tested on the Legion 7A in our initial video about the absolutely gorgeous looking racing game, and on the Aero I got around 70 to 80 FPS in Full HD with DLSS and balanced, the game's high preset and ray tracing reflections and global illumination set to high. And if you want some more details on what you can get out of the game with a 5060 class of GPU, definitely check out that video right after this one. Which leaves us with Pragmata, and the question is, can you run a fully path-traced game on an 80 watts RTX 5070? Well, yes, and on the Aero X16 I managed around 50 to 60 FPS in Full HD with DLSS and balanced, and everything mostly on high settings, and it's been a pretty smooth overall experience. Of course, more FPS would always be nice, but since I think Pragmata really looks its best with path tracing, I would personally gladly enjoy the game like this, especially since you are mostly hovering closer to the 60 FPS mark. Alright, so that leaves us with the Legion 7A and the 5060, so let us fire up 007 First Light again, and using similar settings like we already did on the Aero X16, so that means Full HD, Ultra all the way, and DLSS in quality just pushes us over 50 FPS, while switching to performance again nets us a pretty smooth, roughly 60 FPS experience with no real visual compromises. I would probably add 2x frame generation into the mix as well to get closer to triple-digit FPS numbers here and, again, for that extra bit of smoothness. But yeah, even on a 5060 class GPU in a package, once again, not even weighing 2 kg, you can enjoy one of the biggest releases of the year. Sure, you won't be able to max out every laptop's native resolution, but Full HD on a 16-inch display still looks plenty sharp, especially once you are in a game. And you have to remember, we are still talking about mid-range hardware here. Alrighty good people, that should already almost be it for today. I know this was not quite our usual detailed testing, comparing various laptops across different settings with a fixed benchmarking scene. And while this is of course a great way to effectively compare multiple notebooks, I personally think it does not always capture your actual front-of-screen gaming experience, which is what I wanted to do with this very video. And sponsored or not, these are the settings I would use for each and every one of these puppies right here in front of me, and I think we have come a long way with upscaling, especially with DLSS 4.5. And since it's available for all generations of RTX GPUs, you should definitely give the other modes, especially performance, a try, since it really opens up a lot of these new games even on slightly older hardware. Frame generation gives us the usual additional boost, and you can think of it as, well, let's call it a sort of afterburner for your somewhat mobile gaming experience, and once you get around 45 to 50 FPS without it, it can greatly improve the perceived smoothness of the games you are playing, or easily max out the refresh rate of those super fast laptop displays when you're using a higher-end system like the Blade 16 or the G14 of course. And circling back to our intro, having the gaming performance we just talked about with you wherever you go in subtle packaging that turns these puppies here into your perfect everyday companions is simply amazing and shows once again that you do not always need the thick boys as much as I love them equally. But when it comes to overall mobility and extra flexibility when you are not gaming, the thinner, lighter models are definitely the better choice if you are moving around a lot. And when you are gaming, you do not only get the performance alone, but with an amazing HDR experience for our OLED models for example, and G-Sync capabilities for all displays, you definitely don't have to sacrifice compared to a stationary desktop system. A big shout out to nvidia for sponsoring today's video, and for more about the games I showed you today and their individual integration of Team Green's upscaling tech in its latest generation, please follow the links below. Thanks a ton for watching good people, please leave a like and sub on your way out, and definitely stay tuned for more about 007 First Light. We have more videos coming for that one. My name is Alex, you have been absolutely fantastic as always, and I can't wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.